All right, so picture this. It's a coding competition, years in the future, that feeling of tension. But instead of like rows of people just like zoned in on their screens, it's AIs battling it out. Crazy, right? Like, could competitive programming actually become like an AI-dominated thing?
It's a question a lot of folks are asking, especially with, how fast AI is moving these days. I mean, even a few years back, AI writing complex code, it was like sci-fi, right? And now look where we are.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're diving into today. We have this blog post by, they go by Lied, and it's called, this is a mouthful, kind of a brief overview about the near future of competitive programming.
Catchy, I like it.
Right. But Lied really gets into how AI could totally shake things up, like the whole competitive programming scene. It's actually a pretty good roadmap for today's deep dive, I think.
Okay, so what's got Lied so fired up?
Well, one thing is this idea that AI won't just be solving these crazy hard coding problems, it'll be the one creating them. Imagine puzzles so intricate that they could totally redefine what we even think of as like the limits of like algorithmic thinking.
That's interesting because we're already seeing this kind of creative AI stuff popping up in other areas, right? Like AI-generated music is pushing boundaries. You've got AI-designed chess puzzles that are giving even grandmasters a run for their money.
Oh, yeah, I've seen those AI chess puzzles.
Yeah.
Intense is an understatement.
Definitely. So applying that to competitive programming problems, that's a whole other level. What's Lied think happens to the old problems?
Oh, right. So that is actually another super interesting point that Lied brings up. It's like, what happens to all the existing competitive programming problems when computers become so powerful they can just brute force the solutions? What if we're talking like 10 to the power of 12 calculations per second, like instantly?
Yeah, see, that kind of processing power, it could completely upend the whole rating system. Problems that were once considered, difficult, requiring clever algorithms, they would become, trivial?
Yeah, like meaningless.
Yeah.
And a lot of classic solutions, the ones that used to require real ingenuity, they just be like rudimentary.
Right, exactly. And it kind of highlights this bigger issue, how technological advancements are always changing what skills are actually valuable. Like, look at what automation is doing in different industries. The skills that are in demand, they're constantly shifting. And if you're in tech, you're dealing with that in some way.
Definitely. And speaking of skills, Lied also talks about this relationship between, competitive programming and real life programming. It's like, they're kind of related, but also totally different, right? One is all about algorithms and data structures, super focused. And the other one, real life programming, is all about design, multiple languages, building actual software people use. So where does competitive programming fit into all of this when everything is becoming so focused on real world applications?
Well, Lied presents two possible paths, and honestly, they're both pretty intriguing. Path one is competitive programming starts to look more like real-life programming. So think competitions where you're building bots or you're tackling challenges that are ripped straight from, actual software development.
Yeah, that path makes a lot of sense, right? Make those competitive programming skills directly apply to, jobs and all that. It bridges that gap between, the theoretical stuff and actually building stuff.
For sure. Now, the other path, it's about leaning into what makes competitive programming unique. So not mirroring real-life programming, but pushing it even further in the direction of specialized problem-solving, optimizing algorithms to the max. It becomes more about the pure sport of it all.
Okay, so it's like this fork in the road. Do we make competitive programming like more about getting good jobs, or do we go all in on it being this unique, super challenging mental sport?
Right, and Lied seems to be leaning toward that second path, emphasizing how different competitive programming is. But honestly, there's merit to both. So I'm curious, what do you find more compelling? The practical skills or that pursuit of pure problem-solving domination?
It's a good question. I mean, obviously staying relevant to the job market is important, but there's something really cool about those hyper-specialized problems, that elegance, that intellectual challenge.
Absolutely. Though even if it goes the pure sport route, there's still a big question, and it's something Lied gets into. Can watching someone code for hours actually be a spectator sport? Can competitive programming break through and become a true eSport, like you've got your League of Legends, your Dota 2, all those huge games?
Right. Like watching someone really concentrate on algorithms isn't exactly edge-of-your-seat entertainment.
Yeah, and plenty of people have tried to make thinking activities into eSports. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Like online chess, that's huge now, right? But poker, even with all the strategy and psychology, hasn't quite hit that same level.
So where does that leave competitive programming? I mean, it's not exactly the most visual thing in the world.
Well, I'm curious to hear what Lied thinks about that, because they actually mention a platform coding game that's trying to like push those boundaries.
Oh, yeah. Coding game. They're doing some interesting stuff. They're trying to make it more spectator friendly, like incorporating gamification and visual elements into their competitions. Instead of just seeing lines of code, you might see your program like controlling a team of robots and they're battling it out on the screen. So even if you don't get the code, it's still engaging.
Oh, interesting. So they're making it more visual, more about the consequences of the code. It's like instead of just watching the chessboard, you're seeing the pieces come to life in battle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because there's something more captivating about seeing those actions play out, even if the actions are lines of code.
Definitely. And what if those lines of code had like real world stakes?
No.
Imagine if these competitions involved controlling robots in like an actual arena, or even influencing stuff in a virtual reality environment. Could that be how you get a wider audience interested?
That's a wild thought, right? Like adding that element of surprise, visual spectacle, even real world implications.
Yeah.
That could be huge.
Yeah, it really could. But for all that to happen, there's another factor we got to consider, and it's a big one: AI.
Yeah, AI, it's like the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
Right, or maybe the super intelligent compiler in the room in this case.
Right.
But seriously, Lied seems convinced that AI is going to be the thing that like really shakes things up in competitive programming. And what's interesting is how they see it impacting every level of it. The problems themselves, how players train, how they compete, like everything changes.
It's kind of mind-blowing to think about. Like, we're already seeing AI going head-to-head with human programmers. Like, what was that one? AlphaCode?
AlphaCode, yeah.
Solving problems that were supposed to be like super hard for machines to understand. Exactly. And it's not just about AI solving the existing problems either. Light actually envisions this future where AI is designing the challenges, pushing the boundaries of complexity even further than humans can imagine. Like, imagine trying to solve a problem created by an AI that thinks in ways we don't even understand yet.
Whoa. That'd be next level. Like playing a game against like a being from another dimension or something with its own logic and everything.
Right. Like, how do you even begin to approach that? And it doesn't stop there. Light also talks about AI becoming like a personal trainer for competitive programmers.
Oh, yeah, I remember that part. So you'd have this AI that could like analyze your coding style, tell you exactly what your weaknesses are, and then just create a custom training program for you to improve.
Exactly. It's like having a 247 super coach available whenever you need it.
So we've got AI designing the problems, judging the competitions, coaching the players. It's like we're building the Matrix, but for competitive programming.
The Matrix of coding, exactly. But instead of dodging bullets, we're dodging like logical fallacies and inefficient algorithms.
I like it.
Right.
Though speaking of the Matrix, we should probably talk about the potential downsides too. I mean, Light is definitely optimistic about AI, but AI development is not always smooth sailing. There are going to be bumps in the road.
For sure. It's easy to get caught up in all the hype, this utopian future where AI takes competitive programming to a whole new level. But we do need a little dose of realism here and there.
Right. Because as advanced as AI is becoming, it's still not perfect.
Yeah.
Like it can crunch numbers and optimize algorithms like nobody's business. But when it comes to common sense or understanding the nuances of human communication.
Yeah, that's where things get a bit trickier. And those are pretty crucial if you're trying to design engaging problems or provide effective coaching. Don't you think?
Absolutely. So, yeah, while Lide's vision of this AI-powered competitive programming future is super exciting, we got to remember there are still some hurdles to overcome. Those AI overlords aren't quite ready to take over just yet.
Not just yet. And that actually brings us back to those two big questions that Lide keeps coming back to throughout the post. How to keep competitive programming relevant to the actual real-world demands of software development, and whether it can ever really become a spectator sport, something that grabs the attention of a wider audience.
It's like we're trying to solve this algorithm problem, right?
Yeah.
But it's got two sides. On one side, you want to make sure all those competitive programming skills, they actually mean something in the real world, like when you're building software for actual people.
Yeah, practical skills.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, you're trying to make it a spectator sport, something exciting to watch, something that could be a huge eSport,
Right. And it's interesting, Light doesn't actually solve these problems in the post. It's more like they lay out all these challenges and then kind of leave it open-ended. Like, what do you think?
Yeah, they're not giving us all the answers. It's more like they've handed us all the pieces of a puzzle. Now it's up to the whole competitive programming world to figure out how to put it together, to decide what the future should look like.
And that's where it gets really interesting, I think. Because one thing Light doesn't really touch on is how all of this happens. Will it be the big companies like that coding game platform calling the shots?
Yeah.
Or will it be more, organic, driven by the coders themselves?
That's a good question. Who shapes the future? Big companies or the passionate individuals? It's like we're at one of those crossroads you see in like those fantasy movies,
Yeah, one path is you've got this centralized, maybe more efficient future, but it could be like too controlled,
Yeah.
And the other path, it's more chaotic, more experimental.
Right, more chaotic. But chaos can breed innovation, right?
Well,
So who knows what amazing things people could come up with when they're free to experiment.
that's what I'm hoping for. Though maybe it'll be a mix of both, right? Like the big platforms, they can provide the resources, the infrastructure, and the coders. They provide the creativity, the vision.
I like that. A
Yeah.
partnership, but not a takeover, though that requires a lot of trust, a lot of communication.
Definitely. But hey, if it works, imagine what we could see. Competitive programming, but it's not just about like the most efficient solution. It's about elegance, building systems that are robust, but also maybe even beautiful in a way.
Beautiful code. Now that's something I can get behind. It's not just about functionality anymore. It's about expression. It's about pushing the limits of what technology can do.
Right. Like we're moving beyond just, does it work? Now it's, how does it make you feel? Like appreciating code as art.
I'm totally there for that.
So to everyone listening, everyone who's been with us on this deep dive into the future of competitive programming, what role do you want to play in all of this?
Yeah, think about that. What kind of problems get you fired up? What kind of crazy, amazing experiences do you want to create? Because that's what it's all about, right? Creating the future we want to see.
Absolutely. This is just the beginning of the story. The future of competitive programming is a blank page, and we all get to write the next chapter.
And the coolest part, there are no limits. It's all about pushing those boundaries, thinking bigger, and never stopping that quest for, what's possible with code.